The Independent Power Producers Association of India, popularly known as IPPAI, is one of the oldest non-profit organizations providing a neutral platform to stimulate public discourse in the power and energy infrastructure realm.
IPPAI is working in the area of trying to bring together on a neutral platform various diverse parts of the power sector, players, stakeholders, government, private sector, state, central, etc. We bring them together in the form of dialogues, discussion, debates to look at issues that need resolution, and we play the role of, shall we say, a neutral mediator, where people who come to these conferences are able to meet regulators, judicial authorities, government officials and others in an informal environment and share their thought.
We give respect to our foreign guests.
IPPAI hosts an annual flagship event titled Regulators and Policymakers Retreat. The event, now in its 16th year, was held in Goa recently.
And communication.
We have a very interesting theme which talks about the epochal shift in the idea of India. And we've had some amazing speakers from across the world, and they've basically shared various points of view. Particularly, this becomes relevant in the context of the fact that we have got now a very large population of young people with aspirations, and meeting those aspirations is the challenge.
One is around capital.
The 16th RPR retreat had several interesting panel discussions by eminent speakers. Here's a look at the highlights from the discussion on the topic: changing perception of the role of private sector in the development of India's infrastructure sector, what is the power sector in India and the way forward, availability of economically priced power, optimum utilization of generation assets and stress assets.
The power sector has 8.3% share in the total advances of the banking system, but has 16% of the stressed assets. When I say stress, it's combined both the NPS per se plus those which are restructured. So let's look at what we've tried to do. What are the problems? Why are these stressed assets coming? Most of the stressed assets are coming largely because of the problem of implementation, number one. The second part is even where the entities have actually started operating, there are stresses coming because the cash flows are not adequate to meet the repayment schedule. The Reserve Bank has done it many times. We have put it on our website as well, that there is absolutely no bar, I'm repeating, absolutely no bar in extending finance to an account which is treated as an NPA. The fundamental requirement is recognize the problem, provide for it, but if there is viability, putting more money ensures that viability, then let us do it. We also realize that the banks need access to funds from various sources, which is why we have also allowed them to raise what is called as infrastructure bonds, which is apart from the deposits. And there are certain dispensations like those bonds, there is no priority sector lending commitment, there is no CRR, SLR for that. So again, it is to provide funds to infrastructure sector, power included.
This regulatory retreat, I think the three top things which are in my mind is the government should promote investment into the sector by public. The right instrument is the infrastructure REIT, InvIT, which RBI and SEBI are promoting, and this would allow for billions of dollars of capital to flow into this sector, which can give the people of India a return of 12-13% over 25 years and solve the equity capital issues. Second, I would request the government is to do something about the 400 million Indians that don't have electricity, and we believe that a combination of solar and storage, setting up distributed utility, will be able to deliver power to these 400 million Indians in about 5 years and create massive amounts of wealth for the private sector and the government that will be participating in this, which will then have an impact on the GDP of India because you have 400 million Indians that don't have electricity. The third is, I think, the farmers in India really need our support, and solar water pump for irrigation can solve the problems for 25 odd million farmers that have irrigation pumps today, and maybe 5 to 10 that are waiting in line and don't have it. Their lives can be transformed.
This IPPA conference is pretty good. It brings regulators and the generators and various companies together. We try and understand each other's mind and convey what we feel to them and they also what they feel to us. There were many issues which I also talked about and I heard from others also, like about the power plants, what are the problems they are facing, non-availability of fuel, people-related issues, dispute resolutions, and the cases which are in various regulatory commissions. So we all discussed all those things, and then we also discussed about opportunities on solar power, wind power, and how hydropower is now really not getting that kind of support in India.
In this conference, we have been talking about the involvement of the private sector, which is growing in infrastructure, particularly in the power sector. So the search has been to find structures through policy for the involvement of private sector. How best do we reconcile the private profit with public good? So we have seen various experiments. One successful experiment has been the National Solar Mission, in which due to good policies, we have been able to harmonize these two sometimes contradictory forces, that is private profit and public good.
With rising population and an ever-increasing demand, the future of power is the key. And to delve into the same, there was a session on future of power distribution companies in the context of content and carriage, regulatory assets, legacy issues, financial health of DISCOMs, USO and impact on open access.
For proper functioning of any power system, the general parameter is that the investment into the sector should be in ratio of 2 in generation, then 1 part into transmission and another 2 part in distribution. But of the 3, distribution is the most important because it is what brings cash to the system. Despite, Electricity Act 2003, which was really, very, very futuristic, and a lot of improvements have taken place since then, but still the situation remains is that the distribution losses are pretty high, and particularly the infrastructure at the distribution level in many states is pretty bad, which needs for improvement on a massive scale. The other very important issue is that, why the sector has to be sustainable. You see, we all talk about reliable power, 24/7 power, but you see, for that kind of a system to be there, we really have to invest into the sector, we really have to invest into the infrastructure. And the other issue is that, as a government servant, if my salary over the last 7-8 years has more than doubled, I think some share of it has to go to the power sector also.
I'll just raise 5 issues. First, legacy. Historically, we have told this nation, infrastructure, government knows best. So we are grappling with that psychological mindset. And secondly, we've told everybody, because government knows best, government runs the infrastructure. Therefore, even if you didn't pay for infrastructure, all is fine. Water, electricity, roads, whatever, it is run by the government, it's free. Take it. If you feel like paying, do pay for it. Current problem centers around only one issue, one simple issue. There is no cash in the system. If there is no cash in the system, there is no way that the system can flourish and grow. Cash is the lubricant for any system. The lubricant is gone. The cash has simply evaporated, and that's the second. Third, is suddenly we decided one fine morning that government does not know best, let's start getting the private sector in. So we had a bidding process, we got those bids, and now we landed up with another problem. How do you interpret these contracts? So there's seminars after seminars, court cases after court cases trying to interpret this contract. Can a contract be opened? Can it not be opened? Can Indian coal be substituted with foreign coal? Can I pay a compensatory tariff? Can I not pay? So that whole sector has now moved away from providing electricity to providing jobs for lawyers. And the fourth problem is the solution itself. The solution itself is a problem. And what is the solution? I really do not know. So last issue, what is the future of this sector? So all I can say is don't despair. Finally, let's all remember that we believe in the concept of being born and dying. Birth and death goes on. So these distribution companies will be dead sometime, but then this age we were monkeys. Maybe the next time we are born, we'll be human beings. Thank you so much.
challenge for power has been its smooth transmission. The session on power transmission, current issues and challenges, near, medium and long-term scenarios looked at the hurdles on the way to power transmission more closely.
Transmission is very important, as we all know that power what is being generated has to reach to the end user, because then only the huge investment that is being made in generation sector and distribution sector, then only that investment can be justified. So the role of transmissions becomes very important. What I find that transmission somehow has taken a back seat. Everybody discusses distribution. Generation is also now becoming important. Perhaps industrialists saw huge money there, and they have invested, although now I realize that much money is not probably coming to them. Transmission is very important because power has to travel and has to reach to the end user, otherwise it is of no use. And perhaps this is the reason that transmission is not keeping pace with the developments in generation and distribution, that despite having 2.7 gigabyte, 75 gigabyte of generation capacity, India is still a power deficit country. Another major problem is that of huge transmission losses. So T&D average losses in India, my basic knowledge says, is more than 30%. So that means there is lot of scope of improvement in the transmission sector. So these transmission constraints have to be addressed by the governments, by all the stakeholders. This whole issue of pricing of power has to be addressed. There are states which are able to procure power, say, at below 2 rupees, because they have some Singrauli power, I think, is being provided at less than 2 rupees. Then there are some new power plants which are able to provide power at a very low price.
He's going to release the knowledge report that we put together for this event.
The 16th RPR retreat saw the unveiling of the knowledge report book put together specially for the event.
So would you like to say a few words?
This association is helping the government, the country, the consumer. So on behalf of a part of being a government of Karnataka, I would like to congratulate the stakeholders, because I believe joining together is the beginning. Thinking together is the progress. Working together is the success. I am sure you all are working for the success of this great nation. Country is progressing, but we are on crossroads. Lot of issues has to be corrected among ourselves. Though the Western countries are giving us lot of ideas, but India is such a nation, still we have to depend on various subsidies. From Karnataka, 39% of the power has been given to farmers. We have about 9,500 megawatt capacity, and 7,000 to 8,000 crores has been given as a subsidy to the farmers. So this is the situation. Still I am trying to convince the farmer, and trying to tell them the value of power, what is the cost within them. If definitely governments have to help the farmers, but at the same time we have to bring out a situation, all of you, all us have to join, to teach them, to educate them the value of this power, because all of you are working for a paisa, 2 paisa, 3 paisa, to see that at least this industry feels more stronger. I wish you a great success. Lot of things should come. A message should go out. You should help the government, help the industry, and see that all of us are in the power with 24/7.
The panel discussion on the topic fuel for power, past, present and future elucidated on the problems and opportunities for fuel in India.
We don't have a market for fuel. I think one of the basic problems that we are facing in fuel is the fact that we don't have a market for fuel. If you look at the domestic supply of coal or gas, we simply have no market. There are very few producers. In fact, in coal we have a monopoly. We had a small market for captive coal, which has also been destroyed because of whatever has happened in the last 1 year. So the absence of market on the fuel side, absence of discovery of price of fuel in the domestic market, both for coal and natural gas, in my view, is one of the most important issues. And unless we tackle that quickly, and by embracing market reforms and going for a competitive play in these markets, unless we do that, we are not going to see any improvement in the fuel supply. On the coal side, we need to think about is the efficient use of coal. In my view, that's a criminal waste of a scarce resource. So on one hand, trying to look at how we can create a market, competitive market for fuel supply, including supply as well as the pricing. And on the other hand, making sure that we mandatorily use coal in the most efficient way. So now I am going to invite other speakers to share their experiences. So the first one I'll invite is Mr. Gopalan.
My view is that in somewhere between, let's say, 7 and 10 years, India could have 50%, maybe I'll be even more specific instead of saying solar and wind. I think 50% of fuel that is required in India's power sector can come from solar. Without subsidy, if the government were to recognize distributed utility, a microgrid as a utility that is given a franchise area or a concession for 25, 30 years, I think the economics work out. Government should actually recognize that utility and award them. This would take care of about 400 million people. And we believe that if the policies are right, this can happen perhaps in a 10-year period. The other part is 25 million irrigation pumps in India, which contributes about 20-22% of India's electricity consumption goes to that segment. That also, I believe, can be entirely converted to solar. You can relieve essentially 22% of India's electricity and thus the fuel-related issues for 22% of the 60% of India. You can convert it. If you solve the power problem for 400 million people and 25 million farmers, that will come from solar, then you can imagine what the impact will be on GDP per capita of that 500 million people.
The next speaker is Mr. Kapil Mantri from Jindal Power.
61% of our coal capacity, power capacity is from coal. So clearly we are hugely dependent on coal. 23% is gas and 15% is hydro. So the hydro power capacities are decreasing. Gas's capacity exists, but they don't operate. So if you see the generation, more than 3/4 of our generation is dependent on coal. So we are hugely dependent on coal, and the generation from gas and hydro is reducing. Now, broadly speaking, there's a base load and there's a peak load, right? So coal is amazing source for India's base load, but what do we do about peak load? If you don't have gas, but if you have huge hydroelectric potential, and for some reason, our country has not been able to exploit that, and that's a big opportunity. India's total capacity of hydro, that is greater than 25 megawatt, less than 25 we consider as a small hydro, the potential is 1,45,000, but we have been able to develop only 30% of that. The procurement of hydropower is not as streamlined as thermal. Environment clearance, forest clearance for hydro is a big challenge. The poor infrastructure for Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Himachal is another challenge. So what I propose here is, few things. Enhancement of ROE should be considered. Section 62 for Electricity Act for determination of tariff for hydro is required because it's difficult to decide a tariff of hydro with such an uncertainty on competitive basis. Mega power benefits should continue. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kapil. The next speaker is Deepu.
We have a huge challenge of coal supplies, and the coal companies, particularly CIL and SCCL, have not been able to honor their FSAs, and that's why the linkage realizations have been going down. Logistics has also become a huge nightmare. Indian Railways, they don't commit, they don't sign any agreement, they don't even give you any documentary evidence of having agreed to anything in writing. So there is a huge risk of entering into a thermal coal-based power generation capacity when you have, coal supplies uncertainty and logistics uncertainty. So coupled with this, obviously, if you want to plan something from international sources, you don't know how much to really depend on international coal markets too. Now, pricing in terms of domestic coal has had a dichotomy. When we look at only the domestic market in exclusion, you will see that, allegation of monopolistic pricing is thrown at Coal India. So you would see that they have different grades of consumers. My suggestion is that even for power sector, maybe, for short term, it may increase the pains. Our coal prices might go eventually a little higher. But this is the best opportunity because our international prices are low at this point of time. So possibly if we are to rationalize and align our market price, coal prices with international prices, this is the best opportunity, and possibly the lower international prices provides us that window that we can take decision and do the same thing for power sector as well.
The next speaker is Mr. Satyajit Ganguly.
Now, what are the issues? The uncertain future of Indian domestic gas production has, of course, cascaded the effects on the overall role of gas, and the impacts are already there. The PLF of the average gas power station has come down to a level of 18%. Now, gas as a macro caters to two price-sensitive segments, power and fertilizer. Fuel is not fully priced through in Section 63. And price of fertilizers, on the other hand, is heavily regulated and subsidized. The present policy of gas utilization negates the right of any LP producers to sell gas on purely commercial basis, and they are allocated by the government, and priority is given to fertilizer, LPG, and power sector. The latent gas demand in India is difficult. I mean, coming from electricity sector, it becomes very difficult for me to understand in the gas that even demand estimation is very poor. There are three drivers for natural gas. The long-term clarity around policy, which the presentation is on. I think the other subsystems people can go through. We have to make the process more simple and enable greater autonomy, which is not there presently. And of course, technology development, skill development, and local manufacturing. We need to increase focus on unconventional sources, particularly shale gas. Yes, US has changed the very, very concept of gas pricing based on that. The coal-bed methane is more suitable in our country. We need to secure our resources globally by increasing stake, acquiring and exploring the new assets. We need to expedite development of LNG terminals and pipelines by resolving land acquisition issues. Need to source natural gas at competitive prices, and of course, blending. Last but not the least, let us not forget that gas generation is very close to green generation. It takes care of most of the problem of pollution, and if you can maintain the generation at a high efficiency, it can cater to so-called merit order scheduling of electricity generation also. Thank you.
Thank you, Satyajit.